Hi, my friends. Some words of Torah as we enter into the new year 5782. Some words for Rosh Hashanah. Do you remember Pac-Man and Donkey Kong? If you grew up in the 80s with more primitive electronic games, or perhaps earlier with no games at all, chances are that you were offered the opportunity by a younger person to try out a more sophisticated game more recently, using a controller that was unfamiliar and a game that required far more dexterity and knowledge of the controls than in the old days. I've had more than one experience in being offered to play against one of my children, whether it was a game of Mortal Kombat, NBA 2K20, or Fortnite, and not lasting more than a few seconds in the game before I was killed or some other crushing defeat was experienced. It's quite frustrating and humiliating to be eliminated from a game so quickly. The natural response is, what? What just happened? How could I have lost the game so quickly? I didn't even have a chance. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why I stopped playing video games long ago. I can only imagine that this is how the original Adam must have felt after having sinned in the garden. He had just begun the game of life in the garden, and mere hours later, he was told that game over, Adam. He had failed and was now being eliminated from the game. As our sages relate, the very same day that Adam was created, on the sixth day of creation, was the same day that he sinned and was ejected from the garden. Here is their depiction of the timeline of the sixth day. In hour number 1, God decided to create man. Hour number 2, God consults with the angels. Hour number 3, God gathers the earth with which to create man. Hour number 4, God needs the human being. Hour number 6, God refines all the different systems and tissues within the human body. Hour number 7, God breathes a soul within man. Hour number 8, God brings man into the garden. Hour number 9, God commands man, do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Hour number 10, man eats from the tree. Hour number 11, God judges man's fate. And finally, hour number 12, man was given a pass by God and was allowed to live. Within the span of 1 hour, between hour number 9 and hour number 10, Adam was given one commandment: do not eat from the tree. And yet he failed in that one commandment within an hour. I can only imagine Adam as proclaiming, What just happened? How could I have lost the game so quickly? According to some commentaries, Adam's perplexed cry of exasperation is represented in the sound of the shofar. It is a cry that represents all at the same time. It doesn't seem fair. I'm not capable. How could I, God's crowning achievement, have failed so utterly and so quickly? How can I possibly succeed in this existence called humanity? It is an acknowledgement of my own shortcomings on the one hand, and a plea to God to be understanding all at the same time. And if the most perfect of creations, Adam, could fail so utterly in such a small span of time, oh my Lord, what do you expect of me? The Medrash tells us that this is why Rosh Hashanah was chosen as the day of judgment. The day itself reminds God how flawed the human condition is, and that the shofar is that cry of a man or a woman who doesn't seem to know how he or she will possibly be able to maneuver in this game. The concluding words of the Medrash explain how impactful this is upon Hashem's sense of justice. The Medrash writes, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'Adam. God says to Adam, Zeh siman lebanecha, let this be a symbol for your descendants. Kishem she'amadata lefanai badin hayom hazeh, just like you started off being judged for your actions on this day, Viatzata b'dimus, and I gave you instead a free pass. Kach atidin banecha la'amod lefanai badin biyom zeh, v'yotzin lefanai b'dimus. So will your descendants be judged on this day, and they will end up being given a free pass. So moved is God by a person's own acknowledgement that he or she is no different from original Adam in our ability to follow the rules and our frailty, that he shifts from strict justice to compassion and alleviates the penalty. But hold on a minute. Let's look at that story of Adam and Eve once again. Did Hashem really grant them a free pass? Didn't he eject them from the garden and condemn them to live lives of hard work and suffering? Did not God say to Adam, "You will grow thorns and thistles, and by the sweat of your brow you shall now eat bread"? What does the Medrash mean by saying that Hashem gave man a free pass? Rabbi Yechiel Michal Epstein, the author of the Aruch HaShulchan in the 19th century, makes a passing statement which answers this question. Hashem had originally told Adam, "On the day that you eat from the tree, you will die." And yet Adam continued to live for close to 1,000 years. Did God take back what he had promised? No. The Medrash explains that the word day can mean a different thing in different contexts. From a human perspective, the word day, yom, means a 24-hour period. But from a divine perspective, where time stretches out from the beginning of time until the end of time, 1,000 years is considered just one day. The Medrash provides us with a breathtaking insight into God's system of justice. When we say that God gives man a free pass, it doesn't mean that he rescinds all standards of justice. It rather means that Hashem is able to reorient justice to make it align with his perspective instead of the perspective of the other. Allow me to illustrate. You see a fellow Jew at the supermarket having a meltdown. They start yelling at their child and then act rudely to the checkout attendant and to the other people in line. You are inclined to give that person a piece of your mind for acting so rudely and being cruel and making a chilul Hashem. And it may very well be that that person deserves it. But then you start to think to yourself, what circumstances in my life could ever cause me to behave that way? What if I had just lost my job and my spouse or one of my children received a terrible health diagnosis? Would I perhaps be just as susceptible to having a meltdown? Would I not give myself a pass for acting out? Should I therefore not be charitable in my attitude towards that unfortunate man or woman? Let me go over to them and try to offer soothing words of comfort and understanding that may make all the difference in that person's life. By redefining the word day from man's definition to his own, Hashem was modeling a behavior that goes much farther than just redefining a word. Hashem teaches us that in order to judge the other properly, we must view their situation as if it was our own, instead of projecting otherness upon them. In this vein, the 18th century philosopher Voltaire said, "What is tolerance? It is the consequence of humanity. We are all formed of frailty and error. Let us pardon reciprocally each other's folly. That is the first law of nature." On Rosh Hashanah, we recall that Hashem is our creator and ruler of the game of life. He created us with our natural faults, and as demonstrated by the very first human being, we have a propensity to failure before the game has even started. This is probably clearer during a pandemic than at any other time. Look at how many of us have come short in sampling, in displaying exemplary behavior. But instead of being impelled to despair, Jews take to blowing the shofar, recalling our cries of failure and using those cries to invoke divine mercy, asking Hashem to reorient his judgment to our human failings. We are not out of the game completely. We ask God to be understanding of the fact that sometimes it takes a lifetime to master the console, the controls, and the complexity of this game we call life. At the very same time we do this, we also commit to be charitable with others, just as we wish for God to be with us. So, my friends, let's all have a goodly judgment this year, a judgment that contains divine justice, reoriented to a mercy that is necessary for our frail human condition. Here's wishing you and your entire family a Chag Sameach and a Gemar Chatima Tova. Good Yom Tov, everyone.